Hello and welcome everyone to today's cloud coaching session on integrating large language models with Oracle Digital Assistant. Thank you for joining us. My name is Tara Van Cleve and I'm a marketing event manager for the developer initiative here at Oracle. Today, we're excited to show you how to integrate large language models with Oracle Digital Assistant from scratch. We'll also be recording the session and you'll receive the recording via the same email that you registered with for today's event. If you have any questions during the webinar, please drop them in the Zoom chat and Q&A areas, and we'll be ready to help answer them there. We've also set up a channel in our developer public Slack called Cloud Coaching North America that you can access at the QR code or at bit.ly/odevrel_Slack. We'll also leave that channel open after the event to contact us directly with any questions and also to share resources with you and any of our upcoming events in the series. So today's webinar will be presented by Max Grossman, Senior Cloud Engineer. So without further ado, I will hand it over to Max.
All right, I'll just go ahead and get started. For this presentation today, I'm just going to give a brief overview of Oracle Digital Assistant for those that aren't familiar. And then we're going to dive straight into the ODA console itself and the large language model blocks and how to put those in. For people that aren't familiar, this is Oracle Digital Assistant. This is a architecture of how it works. On the left-hand side here, you have your various channels that users communicate to ODA with. So that could be a web channel, it could be over the phone, it could be Slack, Microsoft Teams, things like that, that the user will, ask questions, type in, things they want answered, various, requests, and it gets sent to the digital assistant. And you can think of the digital assistant itself as I like to think of it as like an air traffic controller or router. It routes the user requests and intents to what we call skills. And skills are just various individual chatbots that can fall under one digital assistant and any functionality related to a particular topic and any flows, things like that, reside in individual skills. So for example, if a user said, I want to schedule a meeting, the digital assistant would take that in, recognize that intent, and route the user into the meeting skill where all the functionality and flows reside for scheduling a meeting. And then finally, these skills are able to connect to backend systems through RESTful services or database links. And in this case, we'll be connecting to large language models, but we'll be connecting through RESTful services to large language models such as Cohere and OpenAI. It's just a brief overview of the four different parts, main parts of ODA. First one is the channel configurator. There's various channels you can set up ODA on, as I mentioned earlier, and you can set these channels up, and one user can talk to the bot through multiple different channels. So you can have the same digital assistant both on Teams, through text, on the web. Every user can have a conversation with the bot, and it'll be the same digital assistant. Next up is dialogue flow execution. The ODA provides a visual flow editor, so you can design out all the flows and necessary conversations and things you need with the user. So we'll be looking at that briefly during the actual demo when we're setting it up. But there's a visual flow designer that we'll be using to create all the components and states within the conversation. Next up is the conversational AI engine. ODA itself has a machine learning model underneath to train the bot to recognize user intents and questions and things like that and route them into the correct flows and skills. We'll also be looking at the LLMs, which is a separate, large language machine learning model that you can insert into ODA. And then finally, connectivity to backend systems. If there's a RESTful service, ODA can connect to it. You can also use database links and connect to large language models as well. Finally, I just have a slide here talking about the LLM blocks. It was a new component added late last year into the release of ODA 23.10. And it allows the ability for ODA to integrate with essentially any large language model. Again, it could be whatever service you have available to you. It could be OpenAI, it could be Cohere, it could be any sort of custom built large language model. As long as there's a RESTful service available, you can connect to it. And then once that service is, integrated, it can be used with any skill or digital assistant. And it's relatively easy to set up with very little, I guess, coding experience required. So now that I have that out of the way, we'll go ahead and I'll jump into the console here. This is the ODA console. This is a fresh ODA console. I haven't added anything. The only thing I've done is created a skill to save time with some intents and entities attached. So the first step within this console, now that we already have a skill made, is to actually add in those LLMs. So the two I'll be adding are OpenAI and Cohere. Cohere has a partnership with Oracle, and they have their own LLM models primarily for enterprise, but I'll be adding in both of these and showing different examples of how they could be used in a chatbot. So I'll go ahead and I'll start with the Cohere model here. This is how you can add REST services into a digital assistant. So I got my notes over here with some of the data, so I'll just throw it in. This is a post request. We'll be sending and receiving payloads from and to the digital assistant here. So go ahead and I'll create this REST service here. And now it's created, I have to edit and add some things in. For most of these large language models, you need a API key or a bearer token of some type to use them. So I'll go ahead and I'll add in the bearer token I have for Cohere. So I'll just copy that in. So now I have the token I need for this right here, and I can just test this, send in a test request to Cohere just to double check that I am connected and I'm getting a response back. So I'll throw in a request in here, and it is a post request JSON format, both the sending and the receiving of information to and from these large language models is with JSON payloads. So I'll go ahead and I'll validate my settings here, just make sure I have everything looks good, and then I'll test the request. So you see I put in the prompt here, generate a fact about our Milky Way, and Cohere came back with a response. And you're able to, within these things, within these payloads, you can set the number of tokens. So the number of tokens, tokens for LLM models are, the number, it's mainly to do with size. Each token is around, roughly 4 English characters. So the more tokens you put in, the larger the response can be. And then there's temperature. Temperature has to do with context and the creativity of the LLM. The higher the temperature, the more creative the LLM model gets with its response. But you have to be careful with this because the higher the temperature and the more questions that are asked, the higher likelihood the LLM could actually lose the context of the question itself and spit back something that's not necessarily correct. So I just added in the Cohere model here. So I'll go ahead and I'll add in the OpenAI model as well. So let me grab that info over here. Same thing as before, it needs a bearer token or API key to function. And then I'll just test this request with another payload here, just to double check this one is working. And in this one, you can actually, within the payload itself, set the role of the large language model. So in this case, the role is system, and we're telling the large language model to be a helpful assistant. So I can send a message here as the user. So I'll just say hello, and I should get a greeting response back. So you see, I got a response back. Hello, how can I assist you today? So both these REST services here are added in to ODA, and now I can use them within the actual chatbots themselves. So I'll go ahead and I'll show how to do that. Let me just refresh here. So I've gone ahead and I've created a very simple skill within ODA here. I only have two intents, and intents are, what the user wants. So I have in here just a greeting intent, and I just have the response back being hello. So if I were to, preview this and I were to say hi to the bot, it would come back with the response hello here. And then I also have just a intent that goes to a menu where I can just pick which LLM model I want, and then it'll go into the necessary flows. So the first step in setting these up, once you have the REST services enabled, is to actually create a component here. So within this model, you have to add in a service, and this is required to transform the payloads. Oracle Digital Assistant has its own payload and JSON format, and some of these LLM models may have different, JSON payload formats. So what you have to do is create these transformer models here. So I've gone ahead and I've created these already, but you can add a service of type new component, and you can do LLM validation, customization, and transformation. So I've gone ahead and I've created these transformation ones, and it gives you the layout when you create these. So I'll just go ahead and create an example one to show you. And I'll just do Cohere again. So this is just an example one. I've already created the transformation models for Cohere and Transformer, or Cohere and OpenAI, and I'll show those in a second. Let me give it a name. So I'll give this a second, and in the meantime, we can go ahead and look at the existing models here. Let me refresh really quick. So this is the component code in here with the handlers to transform the requests. So you see in here, I have a return statement, and I have the various things that will get passed in to that payload that gets sent to the Cohere model here. So you see I have, the max tokens again, so I can set the max tokens within the actual digital assistant. For the response, I can put in the prompt. I can send the temperature, which also can be set within the digital assistant itself. And then there's a stream option. I typically turn this off, but this allows, the LLM model to respond with text over time versus one event or one message response. And then the response payload, we're just transforming it once it gets back to the bot into a variable, and then we have all the information that's returned in a payload here. And these are generated for you depending on which model you pick. I had to create the OpenAI one myself, but the Cohere one is generated for you. So I'll go ahead and I'll just show the example one. And I think, yep, here's the let me go to the example one. Okay, it might still be creating, but these are the models here, and I'll show the OpenAI one. The OpenAI one is similar to this one. It's just the return statement is slightly different, just because the payload looks different for OpenAI. So I have these two set up here, these two transformers, and then the next step is in the configuration of the bot. I would add in the LLM service. So you can add in an LLM service. So I can just call this. I'll call one Cohere call. I can select those REST services I set up. So I set up Cohere and OpenAI. So I'll select the Cohere, and then I'll select the transformation handler. So I'll select the Cohere transformer, and then I'll apply these settings. Mock is just for a static response back. This is useful for testing purposes, but I'm going to keep it off for now because we're going to be passing in info. And then default, you can set a default LLM within the chatbot. So I'll go ahead and I'll add in this service, and then I'll add in another one for OpenAI. So now I've added in my LLM services, I can use them within the actual flows of the chatbot itself. So in here is the flow designer. You can set up various flows and settings in here. For the Cohere model, we're going to look at the example of generating an email based off user inputs. And then for the OpenAI model, we're going to look at unresolved intent and answering, questions the bot may not necessarily have an answer to at the moment. So just to show, I've set up some email settings in here. So I'll just go ahead and I'll run this flow really quick, just to show the info I'm getting and how we're going to pass that to the bot. So I can say, show me LLM menu. And I just set this up to go to the different flows and models here. So I'll go to the Cohere model. And you see we're in that flow I was just showing earlier. We're in this resolve bag, which is just grabbing entities. So I can select some of these example opportunities. So I'll select elemental design. I can provide details about the opportunity. So I can say it was closed January 5th or something like that. I can enter the topic of the email. So if I want this to be a congratulations email on, closing the opportunity, I could throw that in here. And then I could provide, my email signature. So I could do, Max Grossman at abc.com. So you see I've provided this information. And if we look at the variables here, I'm actually saving all this info. So you see I have the opportunity saved in here. I have the topic, I have the opportunity details, and I have that email signature here. And I'll be passing this into the LLM model, into the LLM prompt to generate an email for me. So I'll go ahead and I'll add in that component here. So I'll add it in after this resolution for the various pieces of information I need. So I'll add in a state right here. And there's various different types of states you can add in for, sending messages to user, controlling the flows, things like that. In this case, we're going to go with service integration and invoke large language model. So I'll insert this in here. Just a tutorial video there. And then I can set this up. I already have the prompt created, so I'll just paste that in, but I'll pick the Cohere call. And then I'll go ahead and I'll go to build prompt here. So what I can do is I can paste in the Cohere prompt I have. So this is the prompt I have, and you see some of these fields are what I'm going to be passing in from earlier. So this is the prompt I've just created. This will go to the Cohere model. I can set the max tokens and the temperature. In this case, I'm going to leave it as 0. But I could pass in, values for this, and then it'll generate some output. So I'll just go ahead and I'll do it with mock values here, just to show that, and then we'll look at, passing in actual values. So let me put these in. So I'll go ahead and I'll throw these in. Let me go back to build prompt here. And yep, I accidentally clicked off, so I got to re-enter all these. 1 second. So I'll go ahead and I'll generate output off of this. And we'll wait for the response back from the LLM model. And then once that's verified to be working, we can pass in our own fields in here. So you see right here, it's just generated an email with the various settings and things I put in this prompt here. So it's just generated a very quick email. You see it got the information I put in for elemental design, when the opportunity was closed, congratulations, and then my email signature down here. So now we can actually pass in our values into this. So in here, we can create a result variable if we want the response back to not just be a user message. We want the JSON payload and we want to use that in some way. We can add that in. We can add in buttons that goes to various actions once we get our response back. Streaming, we want off just because we don't want it to stream. We want the response to come back in full. And you can also add in validations on these. We're not going to be covering that today, but you can add in validation transformers to check for specific words or entities within the response, and whether to display that to the user or to resubmit into the LLM. So I'll go ahead and I'll insert values here for these. And ODA uses Apache free marker expressions to grab the info. So I'll be grabbing the info in here after the user input variable is filled out. So I can just put in user input dot value dot email signature. And then I'll just throw an email here. So it'll store this. It should be updating. I'll check that in a second. Topic I can throw in as well. I may have to refresh the page, but I'll just throw these in for now and just verify that it's actually getting entered. Opportunity details, same process here. Let me verify this gets done saving, and then I'll just refresh to see if those got actually updated here. So I'll go into my large language model. I'm not seeing any errors, so it looks like they did save successfully despite the error. And then yeah, you see in here it's been saved. So now if I were to run this flow again, I could pick those fields, pass it into the LLM, and it would generate it for me, the email for me. So I can just go ahead and I'll go through doing this again. I'll go to the Cohere model. And I'll select a different one this time. I'll select Wilson Sporting Goods. Details about the opportunity. I could say closed on again. I could do really anything, but just for simplicity's sake, I'll do the same data. And I'll just throw in a different email just to show. So now I've entered all this info, and now we're hitting that LLM component, and we're passing in everything I've just entered here to the LLM model, and it's generating a response right now, and we should get that response back being displayed once it's done creating. And then we have some buttons and some feedback that you can put on here, but you see it generated this email for me. Congratulations, Wilson Sporting's Goods, things like that. A lot of the development and time in these LLM models is really prompt generation. So, developing these prompts is pretty important. But once you have that REST service in place, you can create a variety of prompts and a variety of flows for the user for generating various things you may need. So you see it pretty concisely generated a decent email here for congratulations on closing this opportunity here. And there's settings you can play around with, such as the heat and the max tokens and things like that. There are options within here, and you can pass those in the handler itself or hard code them in the handler. So I could change the temperature and probably get a more creative response back if I were to put it higher than 0 here. And you can put out of scope things in here as well, along with response validation, which we're not going to touch on today. But you can add in, entities to validate the response that actually comes back from the LLM model. Next up, I'll create one for OpenAI here, and I'll just send it to the unresolved intent. Unresolved is if a user were to ask a question or ask something of the bot, and it doesn't know the answer to or isn't trained for, you could send a response back. So if I were to test this bot again, I would ask something like, what is 1 + 1? The bot's not going to know the answer for that. I haven't trained it for a question like this. So what's happening is it's going into this unresolved intent right here, and I just have an output saying this is the unresolved flow. But you could display a menu to the user saying, giving them some options of what they could do. You could say, sorry, I didn't understand the question. Would you like to speak to a live agent? Things like that. But you could also put in an LLM to maybe answer that question for the user. So what I'll do is I'll add a preceding state here, and I'll just add in another LLM model here. So I'll just throw this in, and I'll throw in the OpenAI call. And what I'll do is I'll build this prompt out, and the only thing I'm going to pass in is user input. So I'll just put it in like this. 1 second. Like that. I'll save that, and then I'll enter in these prompt parameters here. So I can enter in a parameter value. So I'll do user input, and then the one I want is let me find it. System.message .message payload .text, and this just sends in the value of the user's message. So I'll go ahead and I'll add this in. So now I have user input in here, and I'm going to that OpenAI LLM service now versus the Cohere one. And I'll just go ahead and make this the start state. So now when a user types in a message and it goes to unresolved, it'll actually get sent to the LLM and the LLM could potentially answer that. And then after the flow is done, it'll go into the output here and it'll display the message. This is the unresolved flow. And that's just to show that we're within the flow. So if I were to run this again and ask, what is 1 + 1? It'll get sent to that OpenAI LLM model, which will answer the question here. And then again, with these buttons, I can control, what's shown here. So if I wanted to go into different flows for different things, I could add in buttons into this. But yep, you see it comes back with the response and it can continue on with the flow. I just have to adjust some settings with this. But you see it answered the user question and we passed in the user message. You can also define a result variable. So if you want to use this response later in a conversation, for whatever reason, you could store the response, you could store the various variables. So you see here's an option to send the LLM result as a message. You could send it as a JSON response, have it stay in the JSON format, and then display the message using that Apache free marker once it's stored in a variable as well, versus just displaying the message. So I'll turn off the streaming, and I can turn these buttons off as well. And then in the transition here, I can pick the state. So I'll go just straight to output right here. So again, if I were to ask this question, hopefully I don't run out of my allotted tokens. You see we get the response 1 + 1 is equal to 2, and those buttons have been gone. And I could give a plus on that response for the feedback. And then it just says, thank you for your feedback. So this was how to invoke LLMs. If there's no other questions, I'll just go quickly into some more slides just to promote the program and the team I'm on. I'm part of the Oracle Code Innovate program. Code Innovate is a program within Oracle to help customers build out and have a first pass prototype at some of their use cases. We do it for a variety of services here. We work with customers to help train them on various Oracle products and services. It could be ODA, it could be Oracle Apex, it could be analytics, cloud, anything like that. And it really gives the customers a chance to use some of these Oracle services and develop their use cases. We typically do it in a week's period, 4 hours a day, half days online. So a 20-hour sprint to help build out customer use cases, or at least get a prototype and have the customers have knowledge with the specific product they're working with. These are the requirements. Some of these are flexible, but this is typically what we do. And then here's just a slide if any customers are interested in that.
Well, again, thank you all so much for joining us here today. If you want to contact us, please reach out at that email address we showed earlier or directly in the Slack channel, and we will help answer any questions you have and share upcoming events and resources. So thanks again, and we hope to see you at the next one.